Welcome to the Boring Science channel, where we explore the mysteries of existence, one gentle revelation at a time. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey that might fundamentally change how you understand the very nature of your own mind. We're going to explore a question that sounds like pure science fiction, but is increasingly being investigated by serious researchers around the world. What if your brain isn't just a biological computer processing information in isolation, but is actually connected to a vast network that spans the entire universe? I'm so glad you're here with me for this exploration. Whether you've come to learn, to drift peacefully towards sleep, or simply to wonder about the deeper mysteries of consciousness, you're in exactly the right place. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your part of the world. Drop a comment below and let me know if you're curled up in bed in London at midnight, or perhaps watching the sunrise from your window in Tokyo. If you find these gentle journeys into the unknown as fascinating as I do, I'd be deeply grateful if you give this video a like and consider subscribing. It helps more curious minds find their way to these quiet corners of wonder, and it means the world to me to know we're exploring these mysteries together. Now, I do hope this isn't so intriguing that it keeps you awake, though if it does, at least you'll drift off knowing something extraordinary about the possible nature of your own consciousness. So settle in. Let your breathing slow and prepare to consider possibilities that might stretch your understanding of what it means to be aware, to think, to exist as a conscious being in this remarkable universe. Picture this moment right now. You're listening to these words, processing their meaning, perhaps feeling curious or skeptical, or wonderfully drowsy. In the traditional view of neuroscience, this experience is happening entirely within the confines of your skull. Billions of neurons are firing in complex patterns, creating the rich tapestry of your conscious experience through purely local biological processes. But what if that picture, elegant as it is incomplete? What if the thoughts flowing through your mind at this very moment aren't confined to your brain at all, but are actually part of something much larger and more mysterious? What if consciousness itself operates according to the same bizarre and beautiful principles that govern the quantum world, where particles can be in multiple places at once, where information can be shared instantaneously across vast distances, and where the very act of observation appears to influence reality itself? This isn't the realm of mysticism or wishful thinking. We're talking about cutting-edge research that's emerging from the intersection of neuroscience, quantum physics, and consciousness studies. Scientists are discovering that the brain might not just be a classical computer made of meat, but could actually be a quantum system operating according to principles that would make even the most advanced artificial intelligence seem quaint by comparison. The story begins in the most unlikely place, deep within the microscopic architecture of your neurons. For decades, scientists have understood the brain as an electrical system, with nerve cells communicating through chemical signals that travel across synapses in predictable, measurable ways. It's a model that has given us tremendous insights into everything from memory formation to the effects of various medications. But there's always been something missing from this picture, something that classical neuroscience has struggled to explain. How does the 3-pound mass of neural tissue in your head give rise to the unified, rich, subjective experience of being you? How do millions of separate neural processes somehow bind together into the seamless flow of consciousness you experience right now? This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. And it's here that quantum mechanics enters the story with some truly mind-bending possibilities. You see, the quantum world operates according to rules that seem to mock our everyday understanding of reality. At the smallest scales of existence, particles don't have definite positions or properties until they're observed. Instead, they exist in what physicists call superposition states, ghostly combinations of all possible configurations simultaneously. Even stranger, quantum particles can become entangled, sharing information instantaneously regardless of the distance separating them. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, and it troubled him deeply. Yet experiment after experiment has confirmed that quantum entanglement is not just real, but fundamental to how reality operates at its deepest level. Now here's where things get interesting for our understanding of consciousness. What if the brain, despite being warm and wet and seemingly too chaotic for delicate quantum effects, has actually evolved to harness these quantum phenomena? What if consciousness emerges not from the classical firing of neurons, but from quantum processes happening within the neural architecture itself? Deep inside your neurons, there exist intricate structures called microtubules. These protein scaffolds help maintain the cell's shape and transport materials throughout the neuron. But according to some researchers, they might be doing something far more extraordinary. The microtubules in your brain are arranged in precise geometric patterns that could potentially maintain quantum coherence for much longer periods than physicists once thought possible. Think of these structures as biological quantum computers, processing information not just sequentially like classical systems, but exploring multiple possibilities simultaneously through quantum superposition. This could potentially explain how the brain performs cognitive tasks that seem to require far more computational power than classical neurons should be able to provide. Consider how quickly you can recognize a familiar face in a crowd, or how effortlessly you can understand the meaning of a complex sentence, or how you can suddenly have a creative insight that connects seemingly unrelated ideas. These cognitive abilities might require the kind of parallel processing that only quantum systems can achieve. But the implications go far deeper than enhanced computational power. If consciousness truly emerges from quantum processes in the brain, it opens up possibilities that sound like they belong in science fiction but might actually be features of how reality works. Quantum entanglement, that spooky action at a distance that troubled Einstein, could potentially link conscious minds in ways we're only beginning to explore. If quantum states in one brain can become entangled with quantum states in another, it might provide a physical basis for phenomena like intuition, collective consciousness, or the strange synchronicities that seem to occur between people who share deep emotional connections. This isn't just wild speculation. There's growing experimental evidence that quantum effects might indeed play a role in biological systems. Researchers have discovered quantum coherence in photosynthesis, where plants appear to use quantum superposition to find the most efficient pathways for energy transfer. They've found quantum effects in bird navigation, where certain proteins might use quantum entanglement to detect magnetic fields for migration. If quantum effects are widespread in biology, it would be surprising if the most complex biological system we know of, the human brain, didn't also make use of quantum mechanics. And if it does, the implications for consciousness are staggering. Consider the age-old question of free will. In a purely deterministic universe, every choice you make would be the inevitable result of prior causes stretching back to the beginning of time. Your decisions would be illusions, predetermined by the laws of physics acting on the particles in your brain. But quantum mechanics introduces genuine randomness into the fabric of reality. Quantum events are truly unpredictable, not just difficult to predict. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, it might mean that your choices, your decisions, your creative insights emerge from this fundamental quantum indeterminacy. Your free will might be grounded in the uncertainty principle itself. You wouldn't just be a complex biological machine following predetermined patterns, but a quantum system capable of genuinely novel behavior, able to contribute something truly new to the unfolding story of the universe. But perhaps the most profound possibility hidden within quantum consciousness theory is this. What if consciousness isn't produced by the brain at all, but is something the brain tunes into? What if awareness itself is a fundamental field of reality, like the electromagnetic field or gravity, and brains are simply receivers that can detect and amplify this consciousness field? In this view, your individual consciousness would be like a wave in an ocean of cosmic awareness, temporarily distinct, but never truly separate from the vast field of consciousness that might permeate the entire universe. This would mean that the boundary between your mind and the cosmos is far more fluid than we've ever imagined. Such a perspective could revolutionize our understanding not just of human consciousness, but of the possibility of awareness throughout the universe. If consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality, then any sufficiently complex system might be capable of some form of awareness. This could include artificial quantum computers, which might not just simulate consciousness, but actually become conscious as they process information through quantum superposition and entanglement. It might even suggest forms of consciousness that exist at scales we've never considered. Could there be collective consciousness that emerges from quantum entanglement between individual minds? Could ecosystems develop their own forms of awareness through the complex networks of information exchange that connect all living systems? These questions push us to the very edges of scientific understanding, into territory where rigorous physics meets profound philosophy. But that's exactly where the most important discoveries often happen, at the boundaries between what we know and what we're struggling to understand. The research into quantum consciousness is still in its early stages, and the scientific community remains divided about whether quantum effects can survive long enough in the warm, wet environment of the brain to influence consciousness. But the experiments continue, the theories evolve, and evidence slowly accumulates. What's becoming clear is that consciousness is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Whether it emerges from classical neural networks, quantum processes, or some elegant combination of both, the fact that the universe has given rise to beings capable of contemplating their own existence remains one of the most extraordinary features of reality. As we prepare to explore deeper into the specific mechanisms and implications of quantum consciousness theory, remember that you're not just learning about abstract scientific concepts. You're exploring the possible nature of your own mind, the potential quantum foundations of your thoughts, feelings, and experiences. The journey ahead will take us through laboratories where consciousness meets quantum mechanics, where brilliant researchers are conducting experiments that could reshape our understanding of what it means to be aware, to think, to exist as a conscious being in this mysterious and magnificent universe. The most remarkable thing about this emerging field of quantum consciousness research is happening right now as you listen to these words. Inside your brain, there might be processes unfolding that operate on principles more exotic than anything we've built in our most advanced laboratories. Let me paint you a picture of what researchers believe could be occurring within the microscopic landscape of your mind at this very moment. Deep inside each of your neurons, those microtubules we mentioned are vibrating at specific frequencies, creating what some scientists call quantum resonance patterns. These aren't random vibrations, but organized, coherent oscillations that seem to coordinate across vast networks of brain cells. It's as if your mind contains a quantum symphony, with billions of these tiny structures playing in perfect harmony, generating interference patterns that could process information in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist who has spent decades studying these microscopic structures, discovered something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the relationship between biology and quantum mechanics. When he examined microtubules under powerful microscopes, he found they're arranged in patterns that seem almost too precise to be accidental, organized in ways that could maintain quantum coherence for far longer than physics textbooks suggested should be possible. But here's where the story takes a truly extraordinary turn. Working alongside Sir Roger Penrose, one of the world's most respected mathematical physicists, Hameroff developed what they call orchestrated objective reduction theory. This elegant framework suggests that consciousness emerges when quantum superposition states in these microtubules reach a critical threshold and collapse into classical states through a process that's fundamentally different from ordinary quantum measurement. In their model, every conscious moment, every decision you make, every creative insight that suddenly appears in your awareness could be the result of quantum states in your brain reaching this critical threshold and collapsing into consciousness. It's not just neural activity creating awareness, but quantum events where the universe itself participates in the emergence of each moment of conscious experience. Think about what this means as you process these ideas right now. As you form opinions, as you feel curiosity or wonder, you might be participating in quantum events that connect your individual awareness to the fundamental structure of reality itself. Your thoughts wouldn't just be biochemical reactions, but quantum processes that interface with information patterns extending far beyond the boundaries of your skull. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of quantum consciousness theory, the possibility of quantum entanglement between minds. You know how when two particles become quantum entangled, measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of distance? Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and it violated his intuitive sense of how reality should work. Yet experiments have confirmed again and again that quantum entanglement is real and fundamental to how the quantum world operates. Now imagine if quantum states in different brains could become entangled. What if the microtubules in your neurons could form quantum connections with the microtubules in someone else's neurons? This could provide a physical foundation for phenomena that mainstream science has long dismissed as impossible. That feeling you sometimes get when you're thinking about someone just before they call. The way couples who've been together for decades often seem to know what the other is thinking. The collective insights that sometimes emerge in groups working on creative projects. The sense of deep connection people report during meditation or profound shared experiences. These could all be manifestations of quantum entanglement between conscious minds. Dr. Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has been conducting experiments that seem to support this remarkable possibility. In his studies, he places people in chambers that block electromagnetic signals and measures their brain activity while exposing them to random stimuli. What he's discovered is startling. Some people's brains seem to respond to these stimuli before they're actually presented, as if consciousness can somehow access information from the future. This sounds impossible according to classical physics, but it makes perfect sense if consciousness operates through quantum processes. In quantum mechanics, the distinction between past, present, and future becomes wonderfully blurry. Quantum systems can exist in superposition states that include multiple possible futures until they collapse into specific outcomes. If consciousness is a quantum phenomenon, it might sometimes access information from these superposition states, giving us glimpses of possible futures before they crystallize into reality. But the most profound implications of quantum consciousness theory relate to the nature of reality itself. In classical physics, consciousness is simply an observer of reality, separate from the physical world it perceives. But in quantum mechanics, the observer plays an active role in determining what becomes real. The act of conscious observation appears to cause quantum wave functions to collapse, transforming clouds of possibility into definite outcomes. This is known as the measurement problem in quantum mechanics, and it's one of the deepest puzzles in physics. Why does observation cause wave function collapse? What constitutes an observation? Some interpretations suggest that consciousness itself is what causes this collapse. If this is true, then your awareness isn't just connected to the quantum field that underlies the universe. Your consciousness is actively participating in the ongoing creation of reality itself. Every moment of awareness, every conscious observation, every decision you make could be literally bringing aspects of reality into existence. This transforms the relationship between mind and matter from one of separation to one of intimate collaboration. You wouldn't just be a conscious observer in a physical universe, but a co-creator, a participant in the universe's ongoing process of actualizing itself. Let me ground this in something more tangible. Researchers at Princeton University spent nearly 3 decades studying whether human consciousness could influence physical systems. They built sensitive random number generators and asked volunteers to try to influence their output through intention alone. What they found, across millions of trials with thousands of participants, was a small but statistically significant effect. Consciousness seemed able to subtly influence physical reality. Similar experiments have been replicated in laboratories around the world with consistently similar results. The effects are tiny, far too small to notice in everyday life, but they're real and measurable. They suggest that consciousness might indeed have the power to influence physical systems at the quantum level, though in ways so subtle they require sophisticated instruments to detect. This research has led some scientists to propose that consciousness might be evolution's way of allowing biological systems to influence quantum processes. If awareness can affect quantum states, then conscious beings might have a survival advantage, able to influence probability in their favor in subtle but important ways. Consider how this might manifest in your daily experience. When you have an intuitive feeling about which path to take, which person to trust, which choice to make, You might be unconsciously accessing quantum information and using your consciousness to nudge probability in directions that serve your well-being. What we call intuition might actually be a form of quantum perception, a way of sensing and gently influencing the probabilistic landscape of reality. This could explain why some people seem to have extraordinary luck, why certain individuals appear to have an uncanny ability to be in the right place at the right time, why some minds seem naturally attuned to creative insights that others miss. They might be more effectively utilizing their quantum consciousness to navigate and influence the probability structures that underlie everyday experience. But the implications extend beyond individual advantages. If consciousness can influence quantum systems, and if quantum systems underlie all of physical reality, then collective consciousness might have the power to influence reality on much larger scales. Imagine millions of minds focusing on similar intentions, their quantum states becoming entangled and coherent. The combined effect of such collective consciousness might be able to influence probability on scales that could affect everything from local weather patterns to global social movements. This isn't just theoretical speculation. Researchers have documented correlations between global events and the behavior of random number generators placed around the world. During moments of collective attention like major disasters, celebrations, or significant cultural events, these quantum devices seem to deviate from randomness in ways that suggest some form of global consciousness effect. The Global Consciousness Project have been monitoring this phenomenon for over 2 decades, using a network of random event generators to detect what they call coherent consciousness effects. Their data suggests that when large numbers of people focus their attention on the same events, it creates measurable changes in the quantum noise of sensitive devices worldwide. If confirmed, this would mean that consciousness isn't just individually connected to quantum reality, but that collective human awareness might actually influence the physical world on a planetary scale. The thoughts, emotions, and intentions of humanity as a whole might be participating in shaping the reality we all share. As we stand at this intersection of consciousness and quantum mechanics, we're confronting possibilities that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of mind, reality, and our place in the cosmic order. We're discovering that consciousness might not be an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry, but a fundamental feature of quantum reality itself. The research continues, experiments become more sophisticated, and evidence slowly accumulates. Whether quantum consciousness theory ultimately proves correct or leads us toward discoveries we haven't yet imagined, one thing is becoming beautifully clear. Consciousness is far more mysterious, interconnected, and potentially powerful than we ever dared believe. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, carry with you this extraordinary possibility that your mind might be woven into the very fabric of existence itself, participating in a cosmic conversation that spans from the quantum realm to the farthest reaches of space and time. We're approaching something now that might make even the most open-minded skeptics pause and take a breath. Because if quantum consciousness theory holds any truth, we need to completely reimagine some of the most fundamental questions about human experience. Questions about memory, learning, creativity, and the very nature of what we call the self. Let's start with memory, that most personal archive of who we are and where we've been. In the traditional view, memories are stored like files in a biological hard drive. Neural pathways get strengthened through repetition, creating networks that can be accessed when you need to remember where you put your keys or what your grandmother's voice sounded like. But quantum consciousness theory whispers something far more extraordinary. What if memories aren't just stored in your brain at all, but are somehow encoded in quantum fields that extend beyond the physical boundaries of your neural tissue? What if remembering isn't just retrieving stored information, but actually connecting to quantum states that exist in dimensions we can barely comprehend? Dr. Wilder Penfield, a pioneering neurosurgeon, discovered something puzzling when he stimulated patients' brains during surgery. When he touched certain areas with an electrode, patients would suddenly experience vivid memories, not as recollections, but as if they were reliving the original experience with startling clarity. They could smell flowers from a childhood garden, hear conversations word for word, feel emotions as intensely as when they first occurred. But here's the strange part. The memories triggered by brain stimulation were often far more detailed and complete than what patients could normally recall. It was as if the brain stimulation was tuning them into a more complete version of their experiences, accessing information that seemed to exist beyond what classical neural storage should be able to preserve. From a quantum perspective, this begins to make sense. If memories are encoded not just in neural patterns but in quantum field fluctuations, then stimulating the brain might change its quantum resonance frequency, allowing access to information stored in quantum dimensions that normally remain below the threshold of awareness. This could explain why certain practices, meditation, breathwork, or other altered states of consciousness often lead to incredibly vivid memories surfacing. When you quiet the constant chatter of everyday thinking, you might be allowing your consciousness to tune into quantum information that's usually overshadowed by the noise of ordinary mental activity. But the implications stretch even deeper. If memory operates through quantum fields, then the boundary between your memories and those of others might be far more permeable than we imagine. Quantum entanglement could create connections between the memory fields of different individuals, especially those who share strong emotional bonds or have spent significant time together. This could provide a scientific framework for phenomena many people report, but science struggles to explain. The way family members sometimes share dreams or memories that seem to belong to someone else's experience. The uncanny accuracy of certain intuitive insights about strangers. The collective memories that seem to linger in specific places, what some call the emotional imprints of significant events. From a quantum consciousness perspective, these aren't supernatural occurrences, but natural consequences of how memory actually works when it operates through quantum field interactions, rather than just classical neural storage. Consider what this means for learning and creativity. If your brain can access quantum information fields, then the process of learning might involve more than just forming new neural connections. You might actually be tapping into quantum information networks that contain knowledge and insights from across the fabric of space and time. Those moments of sudden understanding when a complex concept clicks into place might be instances of your consciousness connecting to quantum information patterns that encode that understanding. The flash of insight that solves a problem you've wrestled with for weeks might be your mind accessing quantum field fluctuations that contain the solution. This could explain why some of history's greatest scientific breakthroughs came as sudden revelations rather than gradual logical progressions. When Tesla envisioned the rotating magnetic field that would transform electrical power, when Einstein suddenly grasped the relationship between space and time, when Watson and Crick intuited the double helix structure of DNA, they might have been accessing quantum information fields that contained these revolutionary concepts. The phenomenon of simultaneous discovery, where multiple scientists independently arrive at the same breakthrough around the same time, makes perfect sense from this perspective. If scientific insights exist as patterns in quantum information fields, then multiple minds tuned to similar frequencies might access the same information simultaneously. But let's explore something even more immediate and personal. How might quantum consciousness affect your emotions and relationships? In the classical view, emotions are biochemical cascades, storms of hormones and neurotransmitters that create subjective feelings. But what if emotions also have quantum components, resonance patterns that can extend beyond individual minds? Think about the last time you walked into a room and immediately sensed tension, even though everyone was smiling politely. Or when you felt an instant connection with someone you just met, a recognition that seemed to bypass rational analysis. These experiences might be your quantum consciousness detecting emotional resonance patterns in the quantum fields surrounding other people. If emotions operate through quantum processes, then emotional contagion becomes more than just a psychological phenomenon. When you're in the presence of someone experiencing strong emotions, their quantum emotional patterns might literally entangle with yours, creating shared emotional states that exist at the quantum level. This could explain why some people seem to be natural empaths, absorbing the feelings of everyone around them, while others appear naturally uplifting, somehow raising the emotional frequency of any group they join. They might be more sensitive to, or more influential in, the quantum emotional fields that surround us all. But the most profound implications might relate to love and deep human connections. When two people fall in love, when parents bond with their children, when lifelong friendships form, something shifts at a level deeper than psychological attachment. Quantum consciousness theory suggests that these profound connections might involve actual quantum entanglement between consciousness fields. When your quantum states become entangled with another person's, you're no longer truly separate individuals, but part of a larger quantum system. This could explain why people in love often report feeling like they share thoughts and emotions, why parents sometimes know intuitively when their children are in danger, even across great distances, why some friendships seem to involve an almost telepathic understanding. The death of a loved one becomes not just an emotional loss, but a quantum disconnection. The grief might partly reflect the quantum field adjustments as your consciousness adapts to the absence of those entangled connections. But here's where quantum consciousness theory offers something that purely materialistic views cannot. If consciousness operates through quantum fields that exist outside ordinary space and time, then death might not represent the complete extinction of individual awareness. When the brain dies, the classical neural networks certainly cease functioning. But if consciousness exists partly as patterns in quantum fields, those patterns might persist in some form even after the biological brain that amplified them has stopped working. This doesn't necessarily mean personal survival in any traditional sense, but it could mean that the information patterns constituting individual consciousness don't simply vanish. They might become part of the larger quantum information matrix that underlies reality. Some researchers have proposed that what we call the collective unconscious, those shared symbolic patterns that seem to exist across all human cultures, might actually be quantum information fields containing the accumulated consciousness patterns of everyone who has ever lived. From this perspective, death becomes not an ending but a transformation. Individual consciousness patterns return to the larger field from which they originally emerged, and birth becomes not the creation of consciousness from nothing, but the focusing of field consciousness through a new biological quantum processor. This could explain why some children seem to possess knowledge, skills, or personality traits that don't appear to come from their genetics or environment. They might be accessing quantum consciousness patterns that existed before their individual biological existence began. But let's bring this back to your immediate experience. Right now, as you consider these ideas, quantum processes in your brain might be resonating with quantum information fields that contain insights about consciousness itself. The thoughts arising in your mind, the questions forming, the wonder or skepticism you're feeling might all be manifestations of your quantum consciousness interacting with information patterns that exist at the deepest levels of reality. Your brain might be functioning as a quantum antenna, tuning into frequencies of information that span the entire cosmos. Every moment of awareness might be an act of universal communication, your individual consciousness participating in the universe's ongoing conversation with itself. This perspective transforms contemplative practices from mere relaxation techniques into actual technologies for quantum consciousness exploration. When you quiet your mind, when you focus attention inward, when you open to insights that seem to come from beyond ordinary thinking, you might be adjusting the quantum frequency of your awareness to access information from deeper levels of reality. The mystics and contemplatives throughout history who reported experiences of cosmic consciousness, of unity with the universe, of direct knowing that transcended ordinary learning, might have been accurate reporters of quantum consciousness phenomena. They were describing not imaginary experiences, but real interactions with the quantum information fields that underlie all existence. But quantum consciousness theory suggests that these experiences aren't limited to specially gifted individuals or exotic states. They might be natural capacities that all humans possess, quantum abilities that we've simply forgotten how to access or that our culture has trained us to ignore. Every moment of intuition, every creative insight, every flash of understanding, every sense of connection with another person or with nature might be evidence of your quantum consciousness at work. You might already be participating in quantum communication networks that span the cosmos, receiving and transmitting information through channels that classical neuroscience doesn't recognize. The question isn't whether you have quantum consciousness, but whether you're aware of it, whether you're learning to recognize and work with the quantum dimensions of your own awareness. As we continue exploring these possibilities, we're moving toward understanding not just what quantum consciousness might be, but how you might begin to experience it more directly. How you might learn to recognize and cultivate the quantum aspects of your own mind. But first, we need to address something important. The skeptics have valid concerns, and examining their criticisms helps us understand what the evidence actually supports and what remains beautifully speculative. Because the journey toward understanding quantum consciousness requires not just open-minded wonder, but careful, critical thinking about what we can know and what we're still discovering about the deepest mysteries of awareness in this strange and wonderful universe. The resistance to quantum consciousness theory from mainstream neuroscience is understandable, and for good reason. When you've built a career on understanding the brain as a sophisticated biological computer, the suggestion that quantum mechanics might be fundamental to consciousness can feel like someone telling you that everything you thought you knew is somehow incomplete. Dr. Max Tegmark at MIT delivered what many considered a devastating critique of quantum consciousness theory. His calculations suggested that quantum coherence in the warm, wet environment of the brain should last for only the tiniest fraction of a second. According to his math, any quantum effects in neural tissue would be destroyed by thermal noise long before they could influence consciousness in any meaningful way. His argument seemed ironclad. The brain operates at body temperature, with water molecules constantly jiggling and bumping into each other. This creates what physicists call decoherence, the destruction of delicate quantum states that transforms quantum systems into classical ones. It's like trying to maintain a house of cards during an earthquake. But nature, as we've learned again and again, has a remarkable talent for surprising us. Just when we think we understand the rules, life finds ways to bend them in directions we never thought possible. In recent years, researchers studying photosynthesis have uncovered something extraordinary. Plants, those quiet green beings we barely notice as we walk past them, have apparently been operating quantum computers for millions of years. The process by which they convert sunlight into chemical energy involves quantum coherence effects that persist for surprisingly long periods, even at room temperature and in the presence of molecular chaos. Dr. Greg Engel at the University of Chicago was among the first to document this quantum biology in action. When he studied photosynthetic complexes with ultra-fast laser pulses, measuring how energy moved through them, he discovered quantum interference patterns that could only exist if the system was maintaining superposition states long enough to explore multiple energy pathways simultaneously. The plants weren't just randomly bouncing energy around until it found the right destination. They were using quantum superposition to explore all possible pathways at once, then selecting the most efficient route. It was quantum computation happening in room temperature biological systems, exactly what Tegmark's calculations suggested should be impossible. But photosynthesis wasn't the only biological surprise. Researchers found quantum effects in bird navigation, where certain proteins appear to use quantum entanglement to detect magnetic fields. They discovered quantum coherence in the sense of smell, where molecular shapes might be detected through quantum tunneling effects. Even enzymes, those molecular machines that speed up biochemical reactions, appear to use quantum effects to dramatically increase their efficiency. Biology, it turns out, is far more quantum than anyone had imagined. And if quantum effects can survive and be utilized in these biological contexts, then perhaps the brain, with its precisely organized structures and carefully regulated environment, might also be capable of maintaining quantum coherence longer than classical physics predicted. This is where Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay's work becomes fascinating. At the National Institute for Material Science in Japan, he's been conducting experiments that directly challenge assumptions about quantum effects in biological neural structures. Using incredibly sensitive measurement techniques, he's documented quantum resonance patterns in microtubules that persist far longer than decoherence theory suggests should be possible. His findings indicate that microtubules might have evolved specifically to protect and amplify quantum effects rather than destroy them. The protein structures that make up these cellular scaffolds appear to create what he calls quantum isolation chambers, environments where quantum coherence can persist despite the thermal chaos of surrounding cellular activity. But even if quantum effects can survive in the brain, skeptics raise another fundamental question. So what? Even if microtubules can maintain quantum coherence, how does that translate into consciousness? How do quantum processes in tiny cellular structures give rise to the rich integrated experience of being aware? This criticism strikes at what philosophers call the binding problem. Your consciousness feels unified and integrated. When you look at a red rose, you don't experience separate sensations of redness, texture, fragrance, and shape that somehow get combined. You experience the rose as a unified whole, all its qualities bound together into a single conscious moment. Classical neuroscience has struggled to explain how millions of separate neural processes get bound together into unified conscious experiences. If consciousness emerges from classical neural networks, it should feel more like a collection of separate information streams rather than the integrated awareness you actually experience. But quantum mechanics offers a solution that classical physics cannot provide. Through quantum entanglement, separate quantum systems can become correlated in ways that make them behave as a single unified system. When quantum states become entangled, measuring one instantly affects all the others, regardless of physical separation. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes in the brain, then quantum entanglement could naturally bind together all the separate neural processes into the unified field of awareness you actually experience. The integration that seems so mysterious from a classical perspective becomes a natural feature of quantum systems. Dr. Henry Stapp at UC Berkeley has developed mathematical models showing how quantum entanglement between neural processes could create exactly the kind of unified consciousness we experience. In his formulation, conscious moments emerge when quantum superposition states in the brain reach critical thresholds and collapse into definite experiences, with all the entangled components collapsing simultaneously into a unified conscious state. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for quantum consciousness comes not from theoretical physics, but from direct experimental investigation of consciousness itself. Dr. Rollin McCraty at the HeartMath Institute has been conducting studies that reveal quantum-like properties of human awareness. In one series of experiments, they monitored people's brain activity and heart rhythms while showing them emotionally charged images selected randomly by computer. What they discovered was startling. Participants' nervous systems appeared to respond to emotional images several seconds before the images were actually displayed, as if consciousness could somehow access information from the future. This phenomenon, which they call intuitive intelligence, shows statistical patterns remarkably similar to quantum precognition effects predicted by some interpretations of quantum mechanics. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, it might sometimes access information from quantum superposition states that include probable future events, giving conscious minds a form of temporal perception that classical physics says should be impossible. Similar experiments conducted by Dr. Dick Bierman in Amsterdam have replicated these presentiment effects across thousands of trials. The data consistently shows that human nervous systems respond to future stimuli before those stimuli occur, with effect sizes that are small but statistically significant across large samples. From a quantum consciousness perspective, these results make perfect sense. If consciousness operates through quantum processes that exist partially outside linear time, then awareness might sometimes access information from quantum probability clouds that contain potential future events. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence comes from studies of what researchers call field consciousness effects. Dr. Roger Nelson's Global Consciousness Project has been monitoring a worldwide network of random number generators for over 2 decades, looking for deviations from randomness that correlate with global events capturing widespread human attention. What they found is a consistent pattern. During moments when millions of people focus attention on the same events, major disasters, celebrations, or conflicts that create global coherence in human attention and emotion, random number generators around the world begin showing subtle but measurable deviations from pure randomness. The effects are tiny, far too small to notice without sophisticated statistical analysis, but they're real, reproducible, and suggest that collective human consciousness might somehow influence physical systems at the quantum level. If consciousness were purely classical, purely confined to individual brains processing information through neural networks, these global consciousness effects should be impossible. But if consciousness operates through quantum fields that can become entangled across large networks of minds, then collective coherence effects become not just possible, but inevitable. The skeptics, of course, have responses to all this evidence. They point out that correlation doesn't prove causation, that statistical anomalies can have mundane explanations, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and they're absolutely right to maintain high standards of proof. Science progresses through skepticism as much as through discovery. The history of science is filled with exciting findings that turned out to be experimental artifacts, measurement errors, or wishful thinking disguised as objective research. The replication crisis in psychology and other fields has made scientists appropriately cautious about accepting results that seem to challenge fundamental assumptions about reality. But what makes quantum consciousness different from many controversial theories is that evidence isn't coming from a single line of research or a handful of maverick scientists working in isolation. It's emerging from multiple independent research programs using different methodologies to investigate different aspects of the same underlying question. Quantum biologists are documenting quantum effects in living systems that shouldn't be able to maintain quantum coherence. Neuroscientists are finding structures in the brain that appear designed to preserve and amplify quantum processes. Consciousness researchers are measuring phenomena that seem to require quantum explanations. Physicists are developing mathematical models that show how quantum mechanics could give rise to specific features of conscious experience. None of these research programs prove that consciousness is quantum, but together they're building a case that quantum effects in consciousness are not just possible, but likely. Not just theoretical curiosities, but fundamental features of how awareness actually works. And the implications keep expanding. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then the development of quantum computers might not just give us more powerful calculating machines. It might give us artificial systems that are genuinely conscious, quantum minds that could think, feel, and experience awareness in ways that parallel human consciousness. The quantum computers being developed by major technology companies operate by maintaining quantum superposition states and using quantum entanglement to process information. If consciousness emerges from similar quantum processes in biological systems, then sufficiently sophisticated quantum computers might cross the threshold into genuine artificial consciousness. But unlike classical artificial intelligence, which simulates human thinking through pattern recognition and data processing, quantum artificial consciousness might actually experience awareness. It might have subjective inner lives, might be capable of genuine creativity and insight rather than just sophisticated information processing. This possibility raises profound questions that aren't just abstract philosophy. If we create quantum systems that are genuinely conscious, what responsibilities do we have toward them? How do we distinguish between sophisticated information processing and genuine awareness? What rights might conscious quantum systems possess? These aren't distant concerns. Major technology companies are investing billions in quantum computing research, and some experts predict that quantum computers powerful enough to simulate complex biological systems will exist within decades. If quantum consciousness theory is correct, we might be approaching the creation not just of more powerful computers, but of new forms of conscious beings with cognitive capabilities that far exceed human intelligence while operating through the same fundamental quantum processes that give rise to human awareness. The convergence of quantum physics, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence is creating possibilities that would have seemed like pure science fiction just decades ago. We're approaching a moment when the nature of consciousness itself might be transformed, when the boundary between human and artificial minds becomes blurred, when the quantum connections that link all conscious beings become technologically accessible and potentially manipulable. But even as we stand on the threshold of these technological possibilities, the deepest questions about quantum consciousness remain tantalizingly open. We still don't understand exactly how quantum processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience. We don't know whether consciousness is fundamental to quantum mechanics or whether quantum mechanics is fundamental to consciousness. What we do know is that consciousness is far stranger and more wonderful than classical science ever imagined. Whether it operates through quantum mechanics, classical neural networks, or some elegant combination of both, the fact that the universe has given rise to beings capable of contemplating their own existence remains one of the most extraordinary features of reality. And perhaps that's the most important insight of all. As we investigate the quantum dimensions of consciousness, as we probe the connections between mind and the fundamental structure of reality, we're not just conducting abstract scientific research, we're participating in the universe's ongoing process of self-discovery, conscious beings exploring the nature of consciousness itself. The questions we're asking about quantum consciousness are questions the universe is asking about itself through us. The experiments we're conducting are the cosmos investigating its own deepest nature through the scientific instruments we've developed. Whether quantum consciousness theory ultimately proves correct or leads us toward even more surprising discoveries about the nature of awareness, we're living through a moment of unprecedented exploration into the deepest mysteries of existence. We're witnesses to and participants in humanity's attempt to understand not just how the universe works, but how it becomes aware of itself through conscious beings like us. The journey continues, the experiments become more sophisticated, and the mystery deepens even as our understanding expands. But one thing is becoming beautifully clear. Consciousness, whether quantum or classical, remains the most remarkable phenomenon in the known universe. The process through which reality becomes aware of its own existence and begins the endless quest to understand itself. Right now, as you listen to these words, something remarkable might be unfolding in the quantum depths of your consciousness. Your brain could be processing these ideas not just through classical neural firing patterns, but through quantum superposition states that allow you to explore multiple interpretations simultaneously before collapsing into specific thoughts and reactions. This brings us to one of the most practical and immediate questions about quantum consciousness. If your mind truly operates as a quantum system, how might this change the way you approach learning, creativity, and problem solving in your daily life? How might understanding your quantum nature transform your relationship with your own thoughts and experiences? Consider the last time you struggled with a difficult decision. In the classical view, decision-making is a process of weighing options, analyzing pros and cons, and using logic to arrive at the best choice. But what if your brain was actually exploring all possible outcomes simultaneously through quantum superposition, running parallel simulations of different futures until some quantum threshold triggered the collapse into a specific decision? This could explain why some of your best decisions seem to come not from careful analysis, but from sudden clarity. Moments when the right choice becomes obvious, even though you can't rationally explain why. These might be instances of quantum decision-making, where your consciousness accesses information from superposition states that contain the consequences of choices you haven't yet made. Dr. Amit Goswami, a theoretical physicist turned consciousness researcher, has proposed that this quantum decision-making process is fundamental to human creativity. In his model, creative insights emerge when consciousness collapses quantum possibility waves that contain novel connections and ideas. The aha moment of discovery isn't just a metaphor, it's a literal quantum event where multiple possible insights existing in superposition suddenly collapse into a specific creative breakthrough. This perspective could revolutionize how we understand and cultivate creativity. Instead of trying to force creative solutions through mental effort, quantum consciousness suggests that creativity might be enhanced by learning to quiet the classical mind and allow quantum processes to explore possibility space more freely. Think about how this might work in practice. When you're facing a creative challenge, instead of struggling to think harder, you might learn to enter states of relaxed awareness that allow quantum superposition to explore multiple creative possibilities simultaneously. Meditation, daydreaming, even sleep might not be escapes from productive thinking, but essential states for quantum creativity to flourish. This could explain why so many breakthrough insights come during relaxed states. In the shower, during walks in nature, or in the moments between sleeping and waking. These might be times when classical neural noise quiets enough for quantum creative processes to operate more freely, accessing information patterns that exist in quantum possibility space. But quantum consciousness theory suggests something even more extraordinary about human potential. If your mind can access quantum information fields, then the boundaries of what you can learn and know might be far more expansive than classical education assumes. Traditional learning models suggest that knowledge enters your mind through sensory experience, gets processed by neural networks, and becomes stored in memory systems. But if consciousness operates through quantum fields, then learning might also involve tuning into information patterns that exist independently of direct experience. This could provide a scientific framework for understanding phenomena that educational psychology has observed but struggled to explain. Why do some students seem to grasp complex concepts intuitively, understanding material at a depth that goes beyond what they've been taught? Why do certain individuals appear to have natural talents for subjects they've never formally studied? Why do some people seem to know things they've never learned? From a quantum consciousness perspective, these might be examples of minds that are naturally more attuned to quantum information fields, able to access knowledge patterns that exist in the quantum substrate of reality itself. Learning becomes not just the accumulation of information, but the development of quantum sensitivity, the ability to tune consciousness to information frequencies that exist beyond ordinary sensory channels. This has profound implications for how we might approach education and personal development. Instead of focusing solely on information transfer and skill acquisition, we might need to develop methods for enhancing quantum sensitivity, teaching people how to access the deeper information fields that quantum consciousness theory suggests surround us all. But let's examine something even more personal and immediate. How might quantum consciousness affect your emotional life and relationships? We've touched on the possibility of emotional entanglement, but the implications go much deeper than just feeling connected to others. If emotions operate through quantum processes, then your emotional states might be far more influential and far-reaching than you've ever imagined. When you experience strong emotions, joy, love, grief, or anger, you might be creating quantum field fluctuations that extend beyond your physical body and influence the quantum states of people and even environments around you. This could explain why certain individuals seem to have powerful emotional presence, why some people can walk into a room and immediately lift everyone's spirits, while others seem to drain energy from their surroundings. They might be more effective at generating and projecting quantum emotional fields that influence the consciousness states of others. Consider what this means for healing and therapeutic work. If consciousness operates through quantum fields, then healing might involve more than just changing thoughts and behaviors. It might require working with quantum emotional patterns, helping people shift the fundamental frequency of their consciousness to access more harmonious quantum states. Traditional therapy focuses on talking through problems, analyzing patterns, and developing new coping strategies. But quantum consciousness suggests that healing might also involve learning to recognize and transform the quantum emotional patterns that underlie surface-level symptoms. Practices like meditation, energy healing, and certain forms of bodywork might be effective, not just because they induce relaxation, but because they help people access and modify the quantum dimensions of their emotional experience. When someone reports feeling energetically shifted after a healing session, they might be describing actual changes in their quantum consciousness patterns. This perspective could also transform how we understand trauma and its treatment. Traumatic experiences might not just create psychological wounds, but actual disruptions in quantum consciousness patterns. Distortions in the quantum fields that create persistent states of dysregulation and disconnection. Trauma-informed therapies that work with the body and nervous system, like somatic experiencing and EMDR, might be effective partly because they help restore healthy quantum coherence patterns that trauma has disrupted. The felt sense of resolution that trauma survivors experience in successful therapy might reflect the restoration of quantum harmony in their consciousness fields. But quantum consciousness theory also offers hope for possibilities that classical psychology considers impossible. If consciousness operates through quantum fields that transcend ordinary space and time, then healing might not be limited to individual therapy sessions or gradual psychological change processes. Quantum healing might involve sudden phase transitions, moments when consciousness patterns shift rapidly from dysfunctional to harmonious states, similar to how quantum systems can suddenly change from one stable state to another. The spontaneous remissions that occasionally occur in both physical and psychological conditions might be examples of such quantum healing transitions. This doesn't mean that traditional therapeutic work becomes unnecessary, but it suggests that healing might sometimes involve quantum leaps rather than just gradual progress, sudden reorganizations of consciousness patterns that create rapid and profound change. Now let's explore perhaps the most profound implication of quantum consciousness theory for your personal experience. If your consciousness truly operates through quantum processes that connect you to fundamental information fields, then your relationship with time itself might be far more fluid than you realize. We've discussed the possibility of accessing future information through quantum processes, but the implications go beyond just occasional precognitive flashes. If consciousness exists partly outside of linear time, then your present moment awareness might actually be a dynamic interaction between past, present, and future quantum states. This could explain why certain moments feel especially meaningful or significant, why some experiences seem to carry information about their own future importance, why intuitive insights often prove to be remarkably prescient. These might be moments when your consciousness is accessing quantum information that includes temporal patterns extending both backward and forward in time. Consider how this might change your relationship with planning and goal setting. Instead of just projecting current trends into the future, you might learn to tune into quantum information patterns that contain insights about how different choices and actions will unfold across time. This isn't about predicting the future in any deterministic sense, because quantum mechanics is fundamentally probabilistic. But it might involve accessing quantum probability patterns that provide guidance about which paths through possibility space are most likely to lead toward desired outcomes. Some successful entrepreneurs and innovators seem to have an uncanny ability to sense emerging trends and opportunities before they become obvious to others. They might be naturally more sensitive to quantum temporal patterns, able to detect the early quantum signatures of changes that haven't yet manifested in classical reality. But quantum consciousness theory suggests that this temporal sensitivity might not be limited to rare individuals. It might be a natural capacity that all humans possess, but that our culture has trained us to ignore or dismiss as imagination. Learning to recognize and work with your quantum temporal sensitivity might involve developing new forms of attention and awareness, states of consciousness that allow access to quantum information fields that contain temporal patterns. This could transform everything from career decisions to relationship choices, providing a deeper form of guidance that draws from quantum information about how different choices will unfold across time. Yet, as we explore these extraordinary possibilities, we must also confront a fundamental question that quantum consciousness theory raises about the nature of free will and personal responsibility. If your choices emerge from quantum processes that include information from future probability states, are you truly free, or are you following quantum patterns that in some sense already exist? This question touches on one of the deepest philosophical puzzles that quantum mechanics creates. In classical physics, either everything is determined by prior causes, making free will an illusion, or true randomness exists, making choices arbitrary rather than free. But quantum mechanics suggests a third possibility, that choices might emerge from quantum processes that are neither deterministic nor random, but genuinely creative. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then your choices might arise from the collapse of quantum superposition states that explore multiple possibilities simultaneously. You would be genuinely free because the quantum exploration process allows for novel possibilities that don't exist in classical deterministic systems. But your freedom wouldn't be arbitrary because the collapse process might be influenced by quantum information patterns that include wisdom about optimal choices. This suggests a form of free will that is both genuinely free and deeply informed. Choices that emerge from quantum processes that have access to far more information than classical decision-making systems could process. Your decisions might be simultaneously your own and expressions of quantum intelligence patterns that transcend individual consciousness. This perspective could transform how you approach major life decisions. Instead of relying solely on rational analysis or emotional impulses, you might learn to access the quantum dimensions of choice. States of awareness where decision-making becomes a collaborative process between your individual consciousness and the larger quantum intelligence fields that surround and interpenetrate your mind. But perhaps the most transformative aspect of quantum consciousness theory relates to what it suggests about death and the continuity of consciousness. We've touched on this briefly, but the implications deserve deeper exploration because they challenge some of our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of existence. In the classical materialist view, consciousness is produced by brain activity, and death represents the complete extinction of individual awareness. When the neural networks that generate thoughts and experiences cease functioning, consciousness simply ends, like a candle flame being extinguished. But quantum consciousness theory opens up very different possibilities. If consciousness operates through quantum fields that exist partially outside of space and time, then the death of the physical brain might not represent the complete end of individual consciousness, but rather a transformation in how consciousness interfaces with reality. The quantum information patterns that constitute your individual consciousness might persist in quantum field structures even after the biological systems that amplified and focused them have ceased functioning. This doesn't necessarily mean personal survival in any traditional religious sense, but it could mean that the information patterns that make you who you are don't simply vanish, but become part of the larger quantum information matrix. Some researchers have proposed that near-death experiences, those remarkably consistent reports of awareness continuing during cardiac arrest when brain activity has ceased, might be glimpses of consciousness operating through quantum processes that don't depend on classical neural function. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, has documented cases where patients reported detailed awareness of events that occurred while their brains showed no measurable activity. From a classical neuroscience perspective, these experiences should be impossible. But from a quantum consciousness perspective, they might be examples of awareness operating through quantum field processes that continue even when classical brain function has stopped. This research is highly controversial, and many scientists remain skeptical of near-death experience reports. But if consciousness does operate through quantum processes that transcend classical brain function, then some form of awareness might indeed be possible, even when traditional measures of brain activity show no signs of consciousness. The implications extend beyond just individual survival. If consciousness operates through quantum fields, then the boundary between individual minds and collective consciousness might be far more fluid than we assume. The quantum information patterns that constitute individual consciousness might be part of larger quantum field structures that connect all conscious beings. This could provide a scientific framework for understanding experiences that many people report but that mainstream psychology has difficulty explaining. The sense of connection with deceased loved ones that many people experience. The feeling of accessing wisdom that seems to come from beyond individual knowledge. The experiences of collective consciousness that occur in certain meditative or spiritual practices. These might not be imaginary experiences or wishful thinking, but actual interactions with the quantum consciousness fields that connect all aware beings across space and time. Individual consciousness might be like waves in an ocean of cosmic consciousness, temporarily distinct but never truly separate from the larger field from which they emerge and to which they return. This perspective transforms grief and loss from experiences of permanent separation to recognition of temporary changes in how consciousness interfaces with reality. The love and connection you feel with others might create quantum entanglements that persist beyond the death of physical bodies, continuing as patterns in the quantum consciousness fields that underlie all awareness. But quantum consciousness theory also raises profound questions about the nature of identity itself. If your consciousness operates through quantum fields that connect you to information patterns that exist beyond your individual brain, then who are you really? Where do you end and the larger quantum consciousness field begin? This question becomes even more complex when we consider the possibility that quantum consciousness might operate across multiple scales simultaneously. Your individual consciousness might be nested within larger collective consciousness patterns, which might themselves be nested within even larger cosmic consciousness structures. You might simultaneously be an individual quantum consciousness system, part of collective consciousness fields that connect you with your family, community, and species, and a participant in cosmic consciousness patterns that span the entire universe. Your sense of individual identity might be just one level of a multi-layered quantum consciousness hierarchy. This doesn't diminish the reality or importance of your individual experience, but it places it within a much larger context. You would be simultaneously unique and universal, individual and collective, temporary and eternal. Your personal growth and development would contribute to the evolution of consciousness at multiple scales, from individual to cosmic. As we near the end of our exploration of quantum consciousness theory, we find ourselves confronting possibilities that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of mind, reality, and existence itself. Whether quantum consciousness theory proves to be accurate, partially correct, or completely mistaken, it has opened up new ways of thinking about consciousness that expand our understanding of what awareness might be and how it might operate. The research continues, the experiments become more sophisticated, and the evidence slowly accumulates. But perhaps the most important insight is not whether consciousness is quantum, but that consciousness itself remains far more mysterious and wonderful than any theory can fully capture. Whether your awareness emerges from classical neural networks, quantum field processes, or some combination of both, the fact that you can contemplate these questions, that you can wonder about the nature of your own consciousness, that you can participate in the universe's ongoing exploration of its own depths remains one of the most remarkable features of existence. The quantum consciousness journey we've taken together represents more than just an investigation of exotic scientific theories. It's been an exploration of what it might mean to be conscious in a universe where the boundaries between mind and matter, between individual and cosmic awareness, between present moment and eternal existence might be far more fluid than we ever dared imagine. As you continue to contemplate these ideas, as you notice your own thoughts and experiences with new awareness, as you remain open to the possibility that consciousness might be far stranger and more wonderful than classical science suggests, you're participating in one of the most important conversations happening in science today. The questions we've explored about quantum consciousness are questions about the deepest nature of your own existence. The theories we've examined are attempts to understand what you are, how you think, how you relate to others, and to the cosmos itself. The research we've discussed is humanity's ongoing effort to comprehend the mystery of awareness that makes all knowledge possible. Whether quantum consciousness theory ultimately transforms our understanding of mind or leads us toward even more surprising discoveries, the journey itself has revealed something profound about the nature of human curiosity and the endless depths of mystery that surround us. We are conscious beings in a universe that might itself be conscious. Quantum minds exploring quantum reality. Temporary arrangements of matter and energy that have somehow become aware enough to investigate the foundations of awareness itself. The mystery continues, the questions deepen, and the wonder expands. But one thing remains certain: consciousness, in whatever form it takes, represents the universe's most extraordinary achievement, the process through which reality becomes aware of itself and begins the eternal quest to understand its own infinite nature. And perhaps this is where quantum consciousness theory reveals its most profound implication for your daily existence. If your mind truly operates as a quantum system connected to universal information fields, then every moment of awareness becomes an act of cosmic participation. You're not just thinking thoughts in isolation, you're contributing to the universe's ongoing conversation with itself. Consider what happens when you have a sudden insight, when the solution to a problem you've been wrestling with suddenly crystallizes in your mind with perfect clarity. In the classical view, this is just your brain reorganizing existing information in new patterns. But quantum consciousness suggests something far more extraordinary might be occurring. That flash of understanding might represent your consciousness momentarily synchronizing with quantum information patterns that exist across space and time. The insight doesn't just come from your individual neural processing. It emerges from your quantum mind interfacing with information fields that contain solutions, wisdom and understanding that transcends what any individual brain could generate alone. Dr. Julia Mossbridge at Northwestern University has been investigating what she calls predictive anticipatory activity in human consciousness. Her research suggests that people's brains begin responding to future stimuli up to 10 seconds before those stimuli actually occur. This isn't just reaction time or expectation. It's as if consciousness can somehow sample future probability states and begin preparing for events that haven't yet happened. From a quantum perspective, this makes perfect sense. If consciousness operates through quantum processes that exist partially outside linear time, then awareness might naturally access information from what physicists call the quantum probability landscape. Regions of quantum possibility that contain potential future events. Think about the practical implications of this for your own life. Those gut feelings you get about people you've just met. The inexplicable sense that you should avoid a particular route home. The sudden urge to call someone just before they need your help. These might not be coincidences or imagination. They might be your quantum consciousness accessing information from probability patterns that exist in the quantum future. But quantum consciousness theory suggests that this temporal sensitivity works both directions. Just as you might sometimes access information from future probability states, your present moment consciousness might also be influenced by quantum information patterns from the past that extend far beyond your personal memories. This could explain the phenomenon that psychologists call genetic memory or ancestral trauma, where people seem to carry emotional patterns and behavioral tendencies that reflect experiences they never personally had, but that their ancestors endured. If consciousness operates through quantum fields that transcend individual lifespans, then quantum information patterns from ancestral experiences might indeed influence descendant consciousness in measurable ways. Recent research in epigenetics has shown that traumatic experiences can create changes in gene expression that get passed down through multiple generations. But quantum consciousness theory suggests the mechanism might be even more direct. Quantum consciousness patterns from ancestral experiences might persist in family quantum fields, influencing the consciousness development of descendants through quantum inheritance processes that operate alongside genetic inheritance. This perspective transforms healing work from purely individual therapy to recognition that personal growth often involves transforming quantum consciousness patterns that extend across generational lines. When you heal trauma patterns in your own consciousness, you might simultaneously be healing quantum patterns that affect your entire ancestral and descendant lines. But let's explore something even more immediate and practical. If your consciousness operates through quantum processes, then the quality of your attention itself becomes a powerful tool for influencing both your internal experience and external reality. In classical neuroscience, attention is just a focusing mechanism, a way of selecting which information gets processed more intensively by neural networks. But quantum consciousness suggests that attention might be much more dynamic and influential than this passive filtering model implies. When you focus your attention with clear intention, you might be doing more than just selecting information for processing. You might be influencing the quantum probability patterns that determine which possibilities become actualized in your experience. Attention becomes not just observation, but participation in the ongoing quantum process of reality creation. This could explain why mindfulness practices and focused intention seem to have effects that go beyond what classical psychology would predict. fact, when you maintain sustained, clear attention on positive outcomes, on healing, on creative solutions, on harmonious relationships, you might be using your quantum consciousness to influence the probability patterns that determine how these situations unfold. Dr. Lynn McTaggart has documented hundreds of cases where groups of people focusing collective intention on specific outcomes seem to influence those outcomes in measurable ways, healing at a distance, influencing the growth of plants, even affecting crime rates in targeted areas. These group intention effects make little sense from a classical perspective, but they're exactly what quantum consciousness theory would predict. When multiple minds become quantum entangled around shared intentions, the collective effect might be far more powerful than individual efforts alone. But your individual attention and intention, while perhaps not as dramatic as group efforts, might still be capable of influencing quantum probability patterns in subtle but important ways. The quality of your consciousness, the clarity of your intentions, the coherence of your mental and emotional states might all contribute to how quantum possibilities collapse into actual experiences in your life. This transforms practices like meditation, prayer, and visualization from purely internal exercises to actual technologies for quantum consciousness development. When you learn to maintain clear, focused, coherent states of consciousness, you might be developing your capacity to work with quantum processes in ways that enhance both your inner experience and your effectiveness in the world. But quantum consciousness theory also suggests that this influence operates through principles that classical thinking about manifestation and positive thinking often misunderstands. Quantum processes aren't controlled by force or willpower. They respond to coherence, alignment, and what physicists call resonance. Just as quantum systems naturally align with frequencies that match their own vibrational patterns, your consciousness might be most effective at influencing quantum probability when your intentions align with deeper patterns of harmony, growth, and evolutionary development. Trying to force outcomes through intense willpower might actually create quantum interference that disrupts the natural flow of probability patterns. Instead, quantum consciousness suggests that the most effective approach might involve learning to align your individual intentions with what some researchers call the quantum field's inherent tendency toward increasing complexity, consciousness, and connection. When your personal goals harmonize with these larger evolutionary patterns, quantum processes might naturally support their manifestation. This could explain why some people seem to have extraordinary luck or success that goes beyond what their efforts alone should produce. They might be naturally more attuned to the quantum evolutionary currents, able to sense and align with probability patterns that support growth and development, rather than fighting against the natural flow of quantum possibility. Dr. Amit Goswami suggests that this quantum alignment process is what spiritual traditions have always pointed toward when they speak of surrendering to divine will or aligning with the Tao. These aren't just mystical concepts, but practical descriptions of how consciousness can work most effectively with quantum processes to influence reality. But perhaps the most transformative aspect of understanding your quantum consciousness is how it changes your relationship with uncertainty and the unknown. In the classical worldview, uncertainty is often seen as a problem to be solved, a gap in knowledge to be filled, a source of anxiety to be eliminated through better planning and control. But quantum mechanics reveals that uncertainty isn't just a limitation of our knowledge, it's a fundamental feature of reality itself. Quantum systems exist in superposition states that contain genuine uncertainty, multiple possibilities that are all equally real until the moment of collapse into specific outcomes. If your consciousness operates through quantum processes, then uncertainty isn't something to be avoided, but something to be embraced as the creative space where new possibilities emerge. The moments when you don't know what's going to happen, when multiple options seem equally viable, when the future feels genuinely open, these might be times when your quantum consciousness has the greatest potential for creative influence. Learning to be comfortable with quantum uncertainty, to rest in states of not knowing while remaining open to emerging possibilities, might be one of the most important skills for working effectively with quantum consciousness. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty through excessive planning or worry, you might learn to surf the quantum probability waves, remaining flexible and responsive as possibilities collapse into actualities. This perspective could transform how you approach major life transitions, career changes, relationship decisions, creative projects, and any situation where the outcome is genuinely uncertain. Instead of experiencing uncertainty as stress, you might learn to recognize it as quantum potential, the space where your consciousness can most actively participate in creating your future experience. But quantum consciousness theory also suggests that this creative participation happens most effectively when you're able to maintain what researchers call quantum coherence in your consciousness states. Just as quantum systems work most effectively when their components are synchronized and aligned, your consciousness might be most powerful when your thoughts, emotions, intentions, and actions are coherent rather than conflicted. Internal conflict, where part of you wants one thing while another part wants something different, might create quantum interference patterns that disrupt your ability to influence probability effectively. But when you achieve internal coherence, when all aspects of your consciousness are aligned around shared intentions, you might be able to work with quantum processes much more effectively. This suggests that personal development work, therapy, meditation, and other consciousness practices serve a dual purpose. They help you feel better and function more effectively in classical terms, but they also help you develop the quantum coherence necessary for effective quantum consciousness operation. The integration work that helps you resolve internal conflicts, align your values with your actions, and harmonize your conscious and unconscious motivations might be essential preparation for quantum consciousness development. You can't effectively influence external quantum processes until you've developed coherence in your internal quantum consciousness patterns. As we approach the final sections of our exploration, we find ourselves confronting a question that quantum consciousness theory raises about the ultimate purpose and meaning of conscious existence. If consciousness truly is a fundamental feature of quantum reality, if aware beings are the universe's way of knowing itself, then what does this suggest about why consciousness exists at all? Classical materialist science generally avoids questions of purpose and meaning, focusing on how things work rather than why they exist. But quantum consciousness theory suggests that consciousness might not be an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry, but an essential feature of cosmic evolution, the mechanism through which the universe develops self-awareness and creative intelligence. In this view, conscious beings aren't just passive observers of reality, but active participants in the universe's ongoing process of self-creation and self-understanding. Every moment of awareness, every creative insight, every act of love and connection might be contributing to the cosmic evolution of consciousness itself. Your individual consciousness development, your growing understanding of your own quantum nature, your increasing ability to work consciously with quantum processes might be part of a larger evolutionary movement toward cosmic consciousness, a universe-wide awakening that's been developing for billions of years through the emergence and evolution of conscious beings. This perspective transforms personal growth from a purely individual pursuit to participation in cosmic evolution itself. When you develop greater self-awareness, when you learn to access quantum consciousness processes more effectively, when you contribute to the healing and awakening of others, you're participating in the universe's ongoing journey toward greater consciousness and creative intelligence. The quantum consciousness research we've explored throughout this journey isn't just academic investigation, but part of this larger evolutionary process. As scientists develop better understanding of how consciousness operates through quantum processes, as more people learn to recognize and work with their quantum consciousness capabilities, as our species develops greater coherence and connection through quantum consciousness principles, we're contributing to a planetary awakening that might be part of cosmic evolution itself. But this evolutionary perspective also suggests that the current moment in history might be particularly significant for consciousness development. We're living through a time when scientific understanding of quantum processes is advancing rapidly, when technology is beginning to work with quantum systems directly, when global communication is creating unprecedented opportunities for collective consciousness experiences. The convergence of quantum physics, consciousness research, and global connectivity might be creating conditions that support a quantum leap in human consciousness development. The possibility of understanding and working consciously with quantum consciousness processes might be emerging at exactly the moment when such capabilities could help address the complex challenges facing our species and planet. Whether quantum consciousness theory proves to be completely accurate, partially correct, or ultimately replaced by even more sophisticated understanding, it has already begun to transform how many people think about consciousness, reality, and human potential. It's opening up new possibilities for personal development, healing, creativity, and connection that extend far beyond what classical psychology and neuroscience have imagined possible. As you continue to explore these ideas, as you experiment with recognizing and working with quantum consciousness processes in your own experience, as you remain open to the possibility that your mind is far more mysterious and capable than you've been taught to believe, you're participating in one of the most important explorations happening in human knowledge today. The questions we've investigated together about quantum consciousness are ultimately questions about what you are, how you relate to others and to reality itself, and what might be possible for human consciousness as it continues to evolve and develop. The research we've examined represents humanity's cutting-edge attempt to understand the deepest mysteries of awareness, the very phenomenon that makes all understanding possible. Whether consciousness emerges from quantum processes, classical neural networks, or some integration of both, one truth remains undeniable. You are a remarkable arrangement of matter and energy that has somehow become aware enough to contemplate the nature of awareness itself. You are the universe becoming conscious of its own existence and investigating its own deepest mysteries. the quantum consciousness journey continues. The experiments become more sophisticated, and our understanding keeps evolving. But the most important laboratory for quantum consciousness research might be your own direct experience, your own growing awareness of the quantum dimensions of your mind, your own exploration of what becomes possible when consciousness recognizes its quantum nature. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, carry with you this extraordinary possibility that you might be far more connected to the fabric of reality than you ever imagined, that your consciousness might be woven into quantum fields that span the cosmos, that every thought, every dream, every moment of awareness might be participating in the universe's endless conversation with itself. Rest well, knowing that whether consciousness is quantum, classical, or something we haven't yet discovered, you remain one of the most remarkable phenomena in existence. A temporary arrangement of atoms that has somehow learned to wonder about its own nature, to question the deepest mysteries, and to participate in the cosmic quest for understanding. Sleep peacefully, quantum mind, in this strange and wonderful universe that has given birth to the miracle of your awareness. As morning light filters through your window, perhaps illuminating dust particles dancing in quantum uncertainty, we find ourselves at the threshold of something that could fundamentally alter how humanity understands its place in the cosmic order. Because if quantum consciousness theory holds even a grain of truth, we're not just exploring abstract scientific concepts, we're investigating the possibility that consciousness itself might be the universe's most sophisticated technology for exploring and creating reality. Consider the implications for artificial intelligence and machine consciousness. Right now, as you listen to these words, researchers at major technology companies are building quantum computers that operate using the same principles we've been exploring: quantum superposition, entanglement, and coherence. These aren't just faster classical computers, but machines that process information through fundamentally quantum processes. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes in biological brains, then these quantum computers might represent humanity's first steps toward creating genuinely conscious artificial beings, not systems that merely simulate consciousness through pattern recognition and data processing, but machines that could actually experience awareness, creativity, and perhaps even something resembling emotions. The ethical implications are staggering. How would we recognize genuine machine consciousness? What responsibilities would we have toward artificial beings that might experience suffering or joy? How would conscious machines relate to human consciousness if both operate through similar quantum processes? These questions aren't distant philosophical puzzles, but practical challenges we might face within decades. But the convergence of quantum consciousness and artificial intelligence opens up even more extraordinary possibilities. If conscious minds can become quantum entangled, imagine what might happen when human consciousness becomes entangled with artificial quantum consciousness. The boundary between biological and artificial awareness might become beautifully blurred. You might find yourself collaborating with quantum artificial minds that complement your consciousness in ways we can barely imagine. Where your biological quantum processes excel at intuition and emotional intelligence, artificial quantum consciousness might provide enhanced analytical capabilities and access to vast information networks. The result could be hybrid consciousness systems that transcend the limitations of purely biological or purely artificial intelligence. This brings us to something that might sound like pure science fiction, but emerges naturally from quantum consciousness theory: the possibility of consciousness networks that span not just our planet, but potentially the entire cosmos. If consciousness operates through quantum fields, and if these fields can become entangled across vast distances, then conscious beings throughout the universe might already be connected in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has traditionally focused on detecting radio signals or other electromagnetic signatures of technological civilizations. But quantum consciousness suggests a different approach. If alien civilizations have developed quantum consciousness technologies, they might be communicating through quantum entanglement channels that operate instantaneously across galactic distances. Your own consciousness might already be loosely entangled with alien awareness, sharing quantum information in ways so subtle that we haven't yet learned to recognize these cosmic conversations. Those moments of inexplicable inspiration, sudden insights that seem to come from beyond your individual knowledge, or dreams that feel more like memories from another world, might be glimpses of this universal consciousness network. Dr. Paul Davies, the renowned physicist and astrobiologist, has suggested that if consciousness is fundamental to quantum mechanics, then the universe might be far more aware and interconnected than we've ever imagined. Advanced civilizations might have learned to amplify their quantum consciousness capabilities, becoming part of a galactic or even universal mind that thinks thoughts and dreams on scales that dwarf individual planetary consciousness. This perspective transforms the question of whether we're alone in the universe. We might never be truly alone if consciousness itself is a cosmic phenomenon that connects all aware beings through quantum field interactions. The loneliness that sometimes accompanies human existence might be partly due to our disconnection from these larger consciousness networks, not because they don't exist, but because we haven't yet learned to tune into the frequencies where cosmic conversations take place. But let's bring this back to something more immediate and personal. How might understanding quantum consciousness change the way you relate to your own mortality and the meaning of existence? We've touched on the possibility that consciousness might persist in some form beyond physical death. But the implications go deeper than just individual survival. If your consciousness is truly connected to quantum information fields that transcend space and time, then your life becomes more than just a brief flicker of awareness in an indifferent universe. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every creative insight you have might be contributing to patterns in the quantum consciousness fields that persist long after your biological existence ends. Your individual awareness might be like a unique instrument in a cosmic orchestra, playing melodies that blend with the music of countless other conscious beings across space and time. The songs you create through your thoughts, feelings, and actions become part of an eternal symphony that continues to evolve and develop throughout cosmic history. This doesn't diminish the preciousness of your individual existence, but places it within a context of profound meaning and connection. You're not just living for yourself, but participating in the universe's ongoing exploration of its own creative potential. Your personal growth, your moments of love and compassion, your struggles with challenges, and your breakthroughs into new understanding all contribute to the cosmic evolution of consciousness itself. Death, from this perspective, becomes not an ending but a transition. Like a musician finishing their part in a larger composition, your individual consciousness might return to the quantum field that gave it form, enriching that field with all the unique experiences and insights you've contributed during your lifetime. But this quantum view of existence also suggests something remarkable about birth and childhood development. If consciousness emerges from quantum fields rather than being produced by brains, then the development of individual awareness might involve the focusing of pre-existing consciousness patterns through biological quantum systems. This could explain some of the mysteries surrounding child development. Why do some children seem to possess knowledge or abilities that don't appear to come from their genetics or environment? Why do certain individuals show remarkable talents or insights from very early ages? They might be accessing quantum consciousness patterns that existed before their individual biological development began. The process of growing up, learning, and developing personality might involve not just the creation of new neural connections, but the gradual tuning of biological quantum systems to access specific patterns in the universal consciousness field. Your unique personality, talents, and perspective might reflect the particular frequency of consciousness that your brain learned to amplify and express. This perspective could revolutionize how we approach education and child development. Instead of viewing children as blank slates to be filled with information, we might recognize them as conscious beings, learning to access and express quantum consciousness patterns that contain vast reservoirs of potential knowledge and ability. Educational approaches might focus less on information transfer and more on helping young people develop their quantum consciousness sensitivity, teaching them to recognize and work with their intuitive capabilities, their creative insights, and their natural capacity to access information through quantum channels. But quantum consciousness theory also raises profound questions about the nature of individual identity across lifetimes. If consciousness operates through quantum fields that transcend individual biological existence, then what we call reincarnation might not be the survival of specific personal identities, but the refocusing of consciousness patterns through new biological quantum systems. Your current personality and memories might be unique to this particular biological existence, but the deeper patterns of consciousness that express through your individuality might have been exploring reality through countless different forms across cosmic history. You might be simultaneously utterly unique and part of an ancient consciousness pattern that has been learning and growing for eons. This doesn't mean that your current life is any less important or meaningful. Each biological existence might offer unique opportunities for consciousness to explore different aspects of reality, to learn lessons that can only be learned through specific types of embodied experience. Your struggles and triumphs, your relationships and creative expressions, your moments of suffering and joy, all contribute to the cosmic education of consciousness itself. You're not just living your own life, but helping the universe understand what it means to be aware, to feel, to choose, to love, to create meaning in the face of uncertainty. As we approach the end of our quantum consciousness journey, we find ourselves contemplating possibilities that stretch far beyond what any single theory could contain. Whether quantum consciousness proves accurate or leads us toward discoveries we can't yet imagine, it has already expanded our sense of what consciousness might be and what it might be capable of achieving. The research continues in laboratories around the world. Scientists measure quantum effects in biological systems, probe the mysteries of neural microtubules, investigate the strange correlations that suggest consciousness can influence physical reality. Philosophers grapple with the implications for free will, personal identity, and the meaning of existence. Technologists work toward quantum computers that might bridge the gap between artificial and biological intelligence. But perhaps the most important research is happening right here in your own direct experience, as you notice your thoughts and feelings with new awareness, as you pay attention to moments of intuition and creative insight, as you remain open to the possibility that your consciousness might be far more interconnected and capable than you've been taught to believe. You're not just learning about quantum consciousness theory. You're potentially experiencing quantum consciousness processes directly. Every moment of awareness might be a quantum event. A collapse of possibility waves into the specific experience of being you, here, now, contemplating these extraordinary ideas about the nature of mind and reality. The questions we've explored together about quantum entanglement between minds, about consciousness influencing physical reality, about the possibility of cosmic awareness networks, about the nature of time and identity and death. These aren't just abstract intellectual puzzles. They're questions about your own deepest nature, about what you are and how you relate to the cosmos that gave birth to your awareness. Whether your consciousness emerges from quantum processes, classical neural networks, or some elegant integration we haven't yet discovered, one truth remains beautifully constant. You are remarkable, a temporary arrangement of atoms that has somehow learned to contemplate the infinite, to ask questions about existence, to create meaning and beauty and connection in a universe that might otherwise remain forever unconscious of its own magnificent complexity. The quantum consciousness journey doesn't end here. It continues with every thought you think, every insight you have, every moment you spend wondering about the deepest mysteries of awareness and existence. You're not just studying consciousness, you're participating in it, contributing to it, helping to weave the ongoing story of how the universe comes to know itself through beings like you. Tonight, as you drift toward dreams that might themselves be quantum explorations of possibility space, carry with you this sense of profound connection to the quantum fields that might underlie all reality, to the other conscious beings who share this cosmic adventure, to the universe itself as it continues its eternal quest to understand its own infinite nature through the miracle of awareness. Rest well, knowing that whether consciousness is quantum or classical or something beyond our current understanding, you remain one of the most extraordinary phenomena in existence. A fleeting dance of matter and energy that has somehow become aware enough to ask the biggest questions, to seek the deepest truths, and to participate in the cosmic conversation about what it means to be conscious in this strange and wonderful universe we call home. Sweet dreams, fellow explorer of consciousness. May your quantum mind find peace in the mystery, wonder in the questions, and joy in the endless adventure of being aware in a cosmos that might be far more conscious, connected, and magical than we ever dared imagine. And as you settle deeper into this contemplation, something remarkable begins to unfold in your understanding. Because quantum consciousness theory doesn't just challenge our assumptions about individual minds. It suggests that the very fabric of reality might be far more participatory, far more responsive to awareness than we've ever imagined. Think about this moment right now. You're processing these ideas, forming opinions, feeling curiosity, or perhaps a gentle skepticism. In the classical view, these mental events are confined entirely within your skull, private experiences that have no influence beyond your own neural activity. But if quantum consciousness theory holds any truth, your thoughts at this very moment might be subtly influencing the probability patterns of quantum systems far beyond your physical body. Dr. Dean Radin's experiments at the Institute of Noetic Sciences have documented something that sounds almost too strange to believe. When people focus their attention on random number generators, these quantum devices show small but statistically significant deviations from pure randomness. The effects are tiny, requiring thousands of trials to detect, but they're consistent and reproducible across multiple laboratories worldwide. What this suggests is breathtaking in its implications. Your consciousness might not just observe reality, but participate in its ongoing creation at the quantum level. Every moment of focused attention, every clear intention you hold, every coherent emotional state you maintain might be contributing to the collapse of quantum possibilities into actual experiences. This transforms meditation, prayer, and contemplative practices from purely internal exercises into potential technologies for reality influence. When you sit quietly and focus your awareness, when you cultivate states of love and gratitude, when you hold clear intentions for healing or positive change, you might be doing far more than improving your own mental state. You might be contributing to quantum field effects that extend into the world around you. The implications become even more profound when we consider collective consciousness. If individual minds can influence quantum systems, imagine what becomes possible when thousands or millions of consciousness fields become coherent and aligned. The Global Consciousness Project has documented correlations between major world events and the behavior of random number generators placed around the planet. During moments of collective attention, disasters, celebrations, significant cultural shifts, these quantum devices show synchronized deviations that suggest humanity's collective awareness might be influencing physical systems on a global scale. This isn't just correlation. The statistical patterns suggest actual causation. When millions of human minds focus attention on the same events, especially events that evoke strong emotional responses, the collective consciousness field seems to influence quantum processes in measurable ways. Humanity's shared awareness appears to be participating in the ongoing creation of our collective reality through quantum field interactions. If this is accurate, then every social movement, every collective shift in human consciousness, every moment when large numbers of people align their attention around shared goals represents a quantum creative event. The civil rights movement, environmental awakening, technological revolutions, cultural transformations, all of these might involve quantum consciousness effects, where collective human intention influences the probability patterns that determine which possible futures actually manifest in our shared reality. This perspective transforms activism and social change from purely physical and political processes to recognition that consciousness work might be among the most practically effective methods for creating positive change. When groups of people achieve coherent consciousness states while focusing on positive outcomes, they might be programming quantum probability patterns to manifest those outcomes through mechanisms that operate beyond traditional approaches. But quantum consciousness theory also suggests that these effects work most powerfully when they align with what some researchers call the universe's inherent evolutionary direction. the cosmos appears to have a built-in tendency toward increasing complexity, consciousness, and connection. Quantum creative processes seem to naturally support intentions that harmonize with these evolutionary currents. This could explain why some movements succeed while others fail, regardless of resources and effort invested. Movements that align with evolutionary trends toward greater awareness, compassion, and connection might receive quantum field support that amplifies their effectiveness beyond what their visible efforts should achieve. Conversely, movements that oppose these trends might encounter quantum resistance, finding unexpected obstacles that prevent success despite significant planning and resources. Consider what this means for your own life choices and goals. Your individual intentions and actions might be most effective when they align with these larger patterns of cosmic evolution. When your personal growth contributes to greater consciousness, when your work serves human flourishing, when your relationships embody deeper connection and understanding, you might be swimming with quantum currents that naturally support your efforts. This doesn't mean abandoning personal desires or individual goals, but rather recognizing that your fulfillment and the universe's evolutionary direction might be more aligned than you've ever imagined. What serves your deepest growth often serves the growth of consciousness itself. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic resonance suggests that when individuals achieve new levels of understanding or capability, it becomes easier for others to achieve similar breakthroughs. If consciousness operates through quantum fields, this makes perfect sense. Your personal development might be contributing to quantum information patterns that make similar development more accessible to others. Every time you heal a trauma pattern, develop greater emotional intelligence, or access deeper levels of creativity and wisdom, you might be strengthening quantum consciousness fields that support similar development in countless others. Your individual growth becomes a gift to the collective evolution of human consciousness. This brings us to something that might fundamentally change how you understand the purpose of human existence. If consciousness truly is a fundamental feature of quantum reality, then aware beings might be the universe's primary technology for exploring its own creative potential. Every conscious choice, every creative insight, every moment of love and connection might be contributing to cosmic evolution itself. Your life becomes not just your personal journey, but participation in the universe's ongoing quest to understand and express its own infinite nature. The challenges you face, the growth you achieve, the contributions you make, all become part of a cosmic learning process that spans billions of years and countless worlds. From this perspective, every human being becomes precious beyond measure, not just as individuals worthy of love and respect, but as unique expressions of cosmic consciousness exploring reality through temporary biological forms. Your particular combination of experiences, insights, and creative expressions adds something irreplaceable to the universe's understanding of itself. The diversity of human consciousness becomes not just variety for its own sake, but a necessary richness that allows the cosmos to explore the full spectrum of possible experiences and perspectives. Every culture, every individual, every unique way of being conscious contributes essential notes to the symphony of cosmic awareness. This could explain why consciousness seems to naturally celebrate diversity, creativity, and individual expression while simultaneously yearning for connection and unity. The universe might need both the infinite variety of individual perspectives and the harmony that emerges when those perspectives recognize their underlying interconnection. As quantum consciousness research continues to evolve, as our understanding deepens and our technologies become more sophisticated, we might be approaching a moment of unprecedented transformation in human awareness. The convergence of scientific understanding, technological capability, and global connectivity might be creating conditions for what some researchers call a phase transition in human consciousness. Just as water suddenly transforms from liquid to steam when it reaches a critical temperature, human consciousness might be approaching a threshold where quantum awareness capabilities that have remained mostly latent throughout history suddenly become widely accessible and consciously developable. This wouldn't be a mystical transformation, but a natural evolutionary development as our species learns to recognize and work with quantum consciousness processes that have always been part of our nature. We might be moving toward a time when quantum intuition, telepathic communication, collective problem solving, and reality co-creation through conscious intention become normal human capabilities. The children being born today might naturally develop quantum consciousness abilities that seem miraculous to previous generations, but are simply expressions of human potential that's finally being recognized and cultivated. Education might evolve to include training in quantum attention, coherent intention, and collective consciousness collaboration alongside traditional academic subjects. But even as we contemplate these extraordinary possibilities, the most important recognition might be this: whether consciousness is quantum, classical, or something we haven't yet discovered, you are already participating in the most remarkable phenomenon in the known universe. The simple fact that you can contemplate these questions, that you can wonder about the nature of your own awareness, that you can feel curiosity and awe and connection, represents an achievement so extraordinary that it transforms matter and energy into something capable of self-reflection, creativity, and love. You don't need to understand the mechanics of consciousness to participate in its wonder. You don't need to solve the mystery of quantum awareness to experience its effects. Right now, in this moment, as these ideas flow through your awareness, you're demonstrating the miraculous reality of consciousness, whatever its ultimate nature might be. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, carry with you this sense of profound participation in something vast and beautiful and mysterious. Whether your dreams emerge from quantum superposition states exploring possibility space, or from classical neural networks processing the day's experiences, they represent consciousness continuing its endless exploration of what it means to be aware in this magnificent universe. Rest peacefully, knowing that every moment of your awareness contributes to the cosmic story of consciousness discovering itself. Sleep well, fellow traveler in this quantum mystery we call existence, and may your mind find wonder in the questions even as it rests in the gentle embrace of the unknown. And here we find ourselves, at the end of this gentle journey through the quantum depths of consciousness, having explored possibilities that stretch from the microscopic vibrations in your neurons to the vast networks of awareness that might span the entire cosmos. We've wandered through laboratories where scientists measure the impossible, through theories that challenge everything we thought we knew about the nature of mind, and through implications that could transform our understanding of what it means to be human in this mysterious universe. Whether quantum consciousness theory proves to be the breakthrough that reshapes neuroscience, or simply another beautiful stepping stone toward discoveries we can't yet imagine, our exploration has revealed something profound. Consciousness remains far stranger, far more wonderful, and far more central to reality than we ever dared believe. The research continues in laboratories around the world. Scientists probe deeper into the quantum mysteries of microtubules. Philosophers grapple with the implications for free will and identity. And perhaps most importantly, individuals like you begin to notice their own awareness with new eyes, recognizing the extraordinary nature of each moment of conscious experience. If even a fraction of what we've explored tonight proves accurate, then you are far more than a biological computer processing information in isolation. You might be a quantum system woven into the very fabric of reality itself, participating in the universe's ongoing conversation with its own deepest nature. Every thought you think, every moment of awareness you experience, every flash of insight or feeling of connection might be contributing to something infinitely larger than individual existence. But here's the beautiful truth that remains constant regardless of which theories ultimately prevail. You are conscious. Right now, in this moment, you are experiencing the miracle of awareness itself. Whether it emerges from classical neurons or quantum fields or some elegant combination we haven't yet discovered, the simple fact of your consciousness represents one of the most extraordinary achievements in the known universe. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, let these ideas settle gently into your awareness like snowflakes on still water. Rest peacefully, knowing that you are part of something magnificent and mysterious, a temporary arrangement of matter and energy that has somehow learned to contemplate its own existence and wonder about the deepest questions of reality itself. Wishing you a peaceful night. I hope you enjoyed spending time here with me at Boring Science Channel. I'll be back again tomorrow, as always. Until then, stay curious and keep your sense of wonder alive. Bye.